Good day to ye. I realise it's not really been very long since my last episode of Twit, because the last one I did was sort of belated and it ended up being put up a week later than it should have been because I couldn't be bothered to edit it. So now, after speaking about some things on there which you might have caught, I can elaborate on those further because those events have come to pass. Namely, the receiving of a Blitzwing. Oh my, yes, look at this. Oh, isn't he nice? Yes. And no. If you've been paying any real sort of attention to the hype surrounding these new triple changes, then you'll realise that they are like the best thing ever and also really disappointing at the same time. Or at least Blitzwing is. I've heard nothing but good things about Springer, but I couldn't get him because they're sold out everywhere. So, here is the Blitzman himself. He is a very impressive figure, it's got to be said. There is a very strong case for this being a must-have, and I don't want to delve too deep into sort of going through everything about him, because then it will just be a review, and there are plenty of those out there for you to watch, and I'm almost tempted to do one myself, but I do want to go through a few of the things and just state my opinions on him. First of all, he is just enormously large. For a Voyager figure these days, this is something a lot closer to an Ultra figure, I've got to say. He's nice and big and beefy, and there is a lot of plastic going on in here, and you do get a lot of value for money because not only the sort of inherent gimmick of him being a triple changer, you get the face swapping, which is really bloody difficult because all of his face is made of rubber, and when you sort of poke his chin to get him to rotate inside his head, it just feels like you're sort of tearing him apart. And there is the whole argument to be made that this is a classic Blitzwing, so why do you need animated Blitzwing faces? But it's a nice little bonus, I can't complain. He's got his sword, which looks a bit too much like a Willy. He's got a tiny little gun, which looks a lot bigger in pictures. He's got a firing missile. He's just loaded with everything that you would need from like a modern Blitzwing, and it's a nice return to the days when Voyager figures just had everything possible crammed into the available space to just make it that little bit more playable and fun. That is nice. The conversion between modes, that's nice too. It feels, well, it's not 100% good, I've got to say. There's a little something I'll get onto in a minute that is a bit of a nail biter whenever I do it. But it's nice to get this into a plane, and then nice to get it into a tank, and then maybe you can go from plane to tank, you can go from tank to plane, you can go from robot to tank, and every sort of direction of transformation you can do pretty nicely, and it feels good. There's a lot of clever bits going on, especially in his legs, where the treads pop out and extend and everything. But then there are bits that I don't really like. It's like his arms. You can see they don't really look like any sort of vehicle bits, and they end up being on the top of both vehicle modes, and so I suppose they couldn't really have made them look too much like a tank or too much like a jet, but they come across just looking like nothing, and it's like, what is this thing that is on top of this jet? What is this thing that is on the top of this tank? So maybe a bit more sort of realistic detailing would have been good. Vehicle modes to end up looking really sort of, they almost look Cybertronian, but they're not supposed to. They're meant to look like futuristic-y sort of jets and tanks, and I don't know. I just would have liked a Blitzwing that looks like a nice old German tank, and it's pretty close. It's not a H tank. Of course, though, the robot mode is where people have the most gripes, and that's because of the shoulders. Because look what they're doing. They're meant to clip in here with his chest, and so when you move them, you don't untransform them. It is sort of remedied by just pushing the stuff closer together, but of course as soon as you let go it just doesn't want to clip in, and I found that comes from this section of his back, which if you're able to see it in proper light, it's a slightly lighter purple, and it's a lot more of a sort of brittler feeling plastic. It's rougher, it's not nice and glossy and smooth like the rest of him, and you can just tell it's a different kind of plastic, and it's not painted or anything. It's obviously, you can't paint it, it is just this purple colour, and it strikes me as just an odd choice, because they've obviously picked it because it needs to be there for structural reasons, and then it doesn't sit properly. It's like it's under constant stress, and it's sort of pushing the shoulder joints out so that they're not straight, they're sort of like that at an angle, so the bits don't clip in. And I've seen fixes that you can do to make that a bit easier by taking it apart and sanding down some bits, but that's just sort of curing the symptoms. It's not curing the actual cause of the problems, which is this bit that is sort of constantly slightly bent. I don't know, maybe you can take it apart, put it in some hot water, but it doesn't seem like that sort of plastic that would do that. It's not soft enough. So there's a bit of a downside there. Another downside with the shoulders is, well, oh God, the lateral movement is so amazingly tight. It feels like you're going to break all these brackets that the shoulder is attached to, because these are just thin bits of plastic and stuff here. As soon as you go to move that outwards, it feels like you're just going to snap everything, and it is horrid. I can tell that it's just... This is obviously... It's slightly good that it's a tight joint, because that needs to move every time you transform it. But it just seems like there's loads of paint in here. All of this grey, it's not grey plastic, it's painted grey. And it is really laid on thick. All of the paint on this guy is laid on pretty thick. It's like some sort of acrylic stuff, and it just, oh God, it feels horrible to move those. There are screws in the back of the shoulders, which I might try loosening and see if that does anything, but I really doubt it will. I think that's the main reason it puts me off really handling this guy too much, is that you can't pose him easily, because it feels like you're tearing him apart when you do. Oh, Roddy L, this is getting far too much of a review territory, but I'm going to press on because there's one more thing to talk about. Behind his head is the nose cone of the plane, and when you go to transform it, you have to, put it over his head, and his head sort of goes down. It's also on a springy thing, so it just springs up when you do it. But it has to slot in behind the front of this cockpit, and there's like a clip it has to go under, and all this is really tough plastic. This is incredibly rubbery. The whole thing is made of rubber, and it's eating away at it. Every time you clip it in, it's just wearing at this bit here, and I really don't know how long it's going to last. I can see that, giving this to kids, it will get destroyed, because just putting loads of force on it, you have to really, really force it to get that in there to transform, and it is one hell of a ride, I've got to say. It is not pleasant, and I don't understand why they couldn't have just made this purple bit out of plastic so it clips in, and then attach the silvery rubbery bit, because all of this purple bit is purple paint on the silvery rubber, so that's going to wear away as well, and it's just going to look awful over time. So I've got to say, if this third party thing comes out with a plastic nose cone, I would be very tempted to buy it. Although I can't see how you would actually take that off and change it round. So there you have, the big problems with Blitzwing. But it still has to be said that this is a must-have figure. It's the only new Blitzwing that there's sort of ever been. You can count the animated one if you like, but that's just not really the same, is it? This is the only G1 themed Blitzwing that we've had since the original, and it definitely deserves a place on your shelf. I mean, it's got an opening cockpit, for God's sake, even though it can't open in jet mode because the clip has to go against the rubber bit. But anyway, if you can swing the little bit of extra money that this guy's going for at the moment on sites like PAL, that's where I got mine from, then definitely go for it. I mean, this is an astounding figure, and yeah, it's got a few flaws in it, and really they're only exacerbated by the fact that these triple changes have been hyped up so much. I'm just remembering something that Brad said, that these have been propelled by the overhype canon, and that is completely true. The only reason that people are finding these really little things that are wrong with this figure so sort of detrimental is that they thought it would be perfect. and you've really got to shed yourself with those expectations to really enjoy this thing, because no figures we're going to get these are going to be 100% perfect, are they? There are always going to be inherent design flaws in making a triple changer, so just get it and enjoy it, because it is really good and it is worth the extra money for once. That might as well have been a blitzing review, hadn't it? Let's move on! I've got my hands on the last Combaticon, finally got a Vortex, because I had to order it online, but anyway, let's gloss over that fact. I have to agree with what people have said, in that this has to be the best Combaticon. It just feels more well-rounded than any of the others, I've got to say. Yeah, the colour scheme is wacky. Where the hell did this come from? I'm not complaining though, it doesn't look bad. It is pretty garish with red on light purple. It's the sort of G2 Swindle colour scheme, which I tried to escape by, completely avoiding the G2 set. But anyway, this is still a decent figure. For a guy that has to be a combiner bit, it's pretty good. He's got a load of joints behind this sort of kilt here. You can move his legs everywhere because that will move. The only thing that bugs me is his arms, because the elbows are on silly little ratchets, and that is as far as they'll bend, but they bend further backward because that's for transformation. It just seems a bit annoying. But apart from that, and I suppose the helicopter blades just constantly sat there, I just want them to fold this way so that they'll spin on the side of his arm, because like this they can't spin. So why are they there? Does he stab people with them? Are they like all ring claws? I guess it's not too bad. But yeah, Vortex. He certainly does feel like the most sort of poseable Combaticon. I mean, his head is on a ball joint that can look all the way up there, so he can do the whole flying pose if he needed to, and that just feels nice. It's an extra touch of, that's good. And the helicopter mode looks really good as well. It is an old sort of mosquito looking thing, but I do enjoy it. It has some nice sort of angles and panels to it, and it just feels like a helicopter. It's good. But yes, it's bright red. I suppose you've got to get over that. I'm happy to have sort of got the best last, but I suppose there are still sort of little things I think that are a bit disappointing. I mean, look at his chest. That big black space. In the middle, there is space cut out for a Decepticon symbol. On the box art, it is there. On the figure, it is not, and that's just disappointing. Oh, come on, just stick another symbol on there. It's not hard. And his odd sword things, which are this horrid yellow colour, are a bit odd as well, and I just find he can't really wield them in any very good way. So I guess all that's left to say is, let's finish my Bruticus! Ka-chonk. So finally, here is the Brute Man himself. He's a big un. I've got to say, once you actually get this thing together and get all the bits stuck on, it is a mighty beast. Of course there are lots of flaws here, lots of cost-cutting measures that they've employed just to be able to make a combiner, well, cost-effective I guess. But it's still a sight to behold. It's the first proper combiner we've had in such a long time, and it just feels good to know that I have gone out and bought all the bits for it and completed a proper combiner for once. Last time I tried to do that was with Energon. I never got all the bits for the Aerial Bot team, and then I ended up getting them in a gift set, and that doesn't really count because you get all the bits at once. With this, there's been the process of building them up, bit by bit, enjoying each of the robots individually, until you're met with this gargantuan, multicoloured, looks like it probably makes Skittles if it poos kind of thing. But it's good. It is really poseable for a combiner that is this size. He has got all the joints there. He's got elbows, he's got knees, he's got hips, he's got shoulders. His head turns, his waist turns. This arm even has a bicep swivel. It is all there really. It just looks kind of goofy. And yeah, you've got the whole thing where this arm is longer than this one. But to be honest, I don't notice it too much in real life. They're only like a smidgen sort of different in length, and once you get them together and just have it held out, it's sort of hard to notice, at least when you're not looking at it through a camera. There are obviously a lot of options you can do with this. Scramble them about, you know, make the legs, arms and that sort of thing. And it's just a lot of fun, and I'm glad I've finished it to be able to behold the thing in its full glory. And I know a lot of you guys out there will be pretty on the fence as to thinking, you know, are they really worth the money you spend each figure, when, you know, there are a lot of things that are bad about these, a lot of joints that are missing overall, no light piping, weird paint, and yeah, it's very far from perfect. But at the same time, it's awesome because I've got a giant new Bruticus who is like leader size. And obviously it will have cost quite a bit more than the leader figure at the end of the day. Let's not think about that too much and just bathe in the awesome radiance of this. But not for too long if you value your retinas. At least I didn't get the G2 version. Chop, 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 chop. Karate. So that's the biggest things out of the way, and the ride doesn't sort of stop there. Basically, I ordered that lot in a sort of preemptive post-exam celebration plastic strike, and yeah, my exams are finished now. One of them didn't go very well at all, but then none of us thought that, so it's all good. And it was just made very nice by the fact that all of this stuff turned up on the day of my last exam. So I got home and, well, had to go down the post office, but I got home, got this, and it was like, yes, it's all over. I can relax and enjoy a nice hefty Blitzwing, or the fact I've completed my Bruticus, or nip down to Forbidden Planet and find the Wave 3 Fall of Cybertron figures actually in a shop, and not have to spend like loads and loads of money on getting an air raid from America. So I have one here, and yes, another figure that's very, very nice indeed. It's got to be said, this has to be the figure with the most paint on it that I bought recently. Just look at that silver and the gold, and it's shiny, and you've got the red bits and golden bits, makes you look all regal Chinese, and it's lovely. This is a very nice sort of departure from the Shockwave standard, as this is the Shockwave mould, just with a different head and chest, and it just shows you that those are the only things that really make Shockwave Shockwave, because as soon as you take those away, it could be anyone. And this is Air Raid. That's what his box says. He was originally going to be called Fireflight when he was sort of revealed at conventions. That was his name, and that is the character that his bio fits. That is what his colour scheme fits. So, to me, you are Air Raid no longer. This is Fireflight. Fireflight here is very nice. He certainly comes with a lot of guns. Well, not really guns, but swords and things. He's got a nice sword here. It's got a translucent bit in, and it opens up like a pair of scissors, and you can stick the other big sword thing, which is here, on it, and make some weird thing which I cannot fathom how it would be used. The only thing I don't like about this is that it hasn't got a post on it, so you can't stick it on his back and store it anywhere. He has to hold it 24/7. But it's a nice sword. Apparently it looks like the one that Starscream uses in that trailer that they put out before the game came out, so you can sort of give that to him, and I guess that would look pretty cool. Yeah, moving on to the other arm, you've got this giant bayonet thing, which is another lovely sort of translucent glowing blade, and you can fold that away, and it's got a nice sort of golden gun. Insert James Bond reference here, I don't know, it's a nice looking gun. Trying to work out if it looks like anything in the game. I don't think it does. And that's got a massive, really, conspicuous port on the top, but nothing is sort of meant to go on there. You can take this chunk off his back, which is sort of like Shockwave's triple barreled thing, but they've taken a bit out of it. You can stick that on there, I guess. This bit is meant to stick onto this bit for vehicle mode, and you can. There's just loads of different combinations and attachments that all of these weapons can go with, and it just feels really good. You get a lot of options with this guy, and it does sort of feel like it's a bit too much, like you can't use everything at once, but I guess it's better to have too many than too few. Overall, it just looks like a really nice design, and it really does feel separate from the whole Shockwave look. And you'll see he's got a sort of post here. That would be on the top of his vehicle mode, which obviously led me to do things like this. But yes, Air Raid, nay Fireflight, is another recommended Fall of Cybertron figure. I realise now I've only got one to go, and that's Sideswipe. But his face sort of scares me, so I've left him till last. If you can find this guy in a shop, namely a Forbidden Planet, then I'd take a punt on him. He is a little bit expensive for, a brand new deluxe figure, but I guess actually no, brand new deluxe figures do tend to be more expensive than slightly older ones, don't they? I parted with the money, and I'm quite happy with the amount of money that I parted with him, considering that this has been going for like nigh on 20 quid plus like £9 postage on eBay most of the time. So I am satisfied. Yes, I don't think I'll be watching any more robots for a good while yet. This lot are just excellent, and I just can't put any of them down. I reckon it's time to say toodaloo. Wave goodbye, Bruticus. Bye bye.